This is K-Pop Sunday, brought to you by your K-Pop Sunbaes before you have to go back to work on Monday. We are your hosts, Oldar,
Serin,
Min,
and JR.
Welcome to Season 5, Episode 2 of our little podcast. If you've been listening to us since Season 2, you might recall that back in Episode 12, Baby Walks Riding Into the Sunset, we mentioned that the group, as well as fin.k.l and Click B, were featured in the mobile game Let's Go to the Broadcasting Station. That game was released back in 2002 and was about getting to meet members of these groups and winning points by answering questions about them. However, Let's Go to the Broadcasting Station is far from the only video game involving K-pop. So today we're going to be talking about a few types of games and give examples of ones that have come out over the years. As a disclaimer, we won't be mentioning games or mods that are only linked to K-pop through customization, because we want to focus on games that were intentionally made with K-pop in mind. Most of us are gamers, so we don't think it's a stretch that some of you might also be. So let's get into it.
First, let's talk about some games K-pop has appeared in. In 2000, fin.k.l appeared in the PC game Fast Food Restaurant as either branch managers or generic characters. Then, in 2002, they had a map themed after them in Fortress 2 Blue. As the game isn't playable anymore, Oldar found some footage of the red version to get an idea of what the game was, and in her opinion, it looks a lot like the game Worms, but with tanks. In addition to a map, there were themed events, background music, and more for it.
Fast forward to 2020. BTS appeared in the popular game Fortnite when their choreography video for Dynamite premiered in the game's Party Royale mode, and new emotes were added. Also that year, BTS started collaborating with MapleStory. It's been around since 2003, and though all the members played it, Jin is the most active member. Together, they created hats as well as a set based on Black Swan. A set based on their lightstick was also created, but it wasn't drawn up by the members. Then 2 years later, Jin became an intern, quote-unquote, for the planning team where he suggested changes to the game, events, and items.
In July of 2022, BlackPink held a virtual concert in the game PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, or PUBG. Afterwards, players were able to wear outfits inspired by them. Speaking of PUBG, it was added as a new event category, alongside horseback riding, for the 2019 Idol Star Athletics Championships, and has been a permanent category ever since, as a lot of idols also are gamers, so it makes sense.
The final game we want to mention in this section is Roblox. Last year, NCT 127 had a concert in the game. There was a space dedicated to the group and items to customize the appearance of players. It took about 15 minutes, and afterward, the members stayed to hang out with fans for a bit. I know someone who actually watched that, and she was like, no, seriously, they're in the game hanging out with fans. It's not just,
That's
the digital
so cool.
concert. She was so happy. A few months later, TXT joined the game. However, their addition had a bit of a twist. They joined in collaboration with Manchester City's football club, aka soccer, and even met one of the players on the team. TXT had released the single Do It Like That, and that song was to feature in the game with the team. Around that time, BlackPink joined the game with The Palace, which was themed after them and had avatars of the members.
Moving on, let's talk about a K-pop game that includes multiple groups and lets you manage your bias. Star Pop, Stars in My Palms, was released on September 18th, 2015 and developed by Soulfinger. It was a mobile game that featured schedules your idol could attend and recipes you could cook, among other activities. What's likely the most appealing part of this game is that you could cook for your bias and make sure they got to rest. Second and third gen groups that were in it included BAP, Big Flo, CN Blue, EXID, EXO, N-Flying, NCT, Pentagon, Red Velvet, SHINee, Super Junior, TVXQ, and soloist and actor Yoo Sun-ho. It had its final update on November 19th, 2020. Unfortunately, when Oldar tried to access the game on an old device, it didn't work and it can no longer be downloaded, so we presume it is no longer playable.
Another game type is K-pop creator. If you ever wanted to make your own K-pop group by picking members and more, this game is for you. An example of this is Monthly Idol, which is a game where you can create and manage your own idol group. It takes you through the business side of training up idols, producing an album, promoting your group, and building a company. If you're into third-gen K-pop, you'll probably enjoy the references to the idols and industry of that time. It was created by 608 Factory, and as of this recording, it's available on iOS and Android mobile devices. Interestingly, this game has a sequel called Monthly Entertainment. It expands on the previous game by giving players more choices, such as what type of group they want to create, for example, idol, singer, band, etc., and is a good snapshot of the industry during 4th Gen. It also has events such as school graduations and military enlistment periods. Like its predecessor, it's also currently available on Android and iOS.
Let's move on to games that involved the music of K-pop. Firstly, I want to start with that there are many, and I mean many, games that involve dancing to K-pop. So let's talk about a few that you might know. DDR, which is short for Dance Dance Revolution, is a household name and is known for having pads with arrows that players can step on to dance to catchy song. DDR first hit South Korea in 2000 with Dance Dance Revolution 3rd Mix Arcade, which was an arcade machine, for the ones that don't know. And that included many first-gen hits like Lee Jung-hyun's Wa and Baek Ji-young's Burden.
There was also a second version that included songs like Country Coco's Gimme Gimme and Tashani's Caution. By the way, I was 5 years old in 2000, and there was a video arcade near my grandma's place, and I can guarantee it was hugely popular.
However, a similar game that's had a longer life in Korea is the Pump It Up series. First Dance Floor started the series in August 1999 and was basically Korea's answer to DDR. Over the years, it's included songs like One Time's Hot and Deuce's We Are, which is a duo we did an episode on last season. If you're a fan of Ruby, creator Monty you might recall that at RTX 2012 he danced to Lexi's Greenhorn, which was remixed with One Time's Hot. In recent years, this franchise has included songs from groups such as iKON.
That said, our audience might be more familiar with this next video game series. Just Dance is a popular game that has included K-pop for longer than you might realize. Unlike DDR and Pump It Up, Just Dance allows for a larger range of motion to dance, as you don't need a pad for it. In 2011, the first Japanese release of the series, Just Dance Wii, had Japanese versions of Kara's Jumping and Mr., Boa's Valenti, and TVXQ's Why Keep Your Head Down. If you're aware of how big those three artists are in Japan, then their inclusion in this game probably isn't a surprise to you, but Kara especially was a staple who kept appearing in the series. Interestingly, Just Dance Wii U from 2014 had songs from Big Bang and Psy. Why is that interesting? Well, because a year prior in 2013, Psy's Gentleman appeared on Just Dance 2014, which meant he was the first Korean artist to appear in the main, or US, version of the game. And I actually had this game on my Xbox 360 and it was quite fun, so if you find it, I do recommend it. But K-pop didn't start to appear in that version with every release until 2016 when Psy's Daddy featuring CL was included. Since then, many artists such as Hyuna, Big Bang, BlackPink, Twice, 21, NCT 127, EXO, aespa, Super M, KDA, BTS, Red Velvet, ITZY, and ATEEZ have been in the Just Dance series.
Another type of music game that are popular are tap rhythm games. Basically, you tap on the notes as they come up while a song plays, and the more accurate you are, the higher your score. These are typically mobile games that include quote-unquote superstar in the title and were made by the developer Dalcomsoft Incorporated. One version of this are games that include multiple artists from a certain company. As of this recording, there are games for artists under SM, YG, JYP, HYBE, Starship, and FNC. There used to be more companies with their own apps, but unfortunately, the one for Pledis went down in 2021, and the games for Brand New, P Nation, and Woollim went offline at the end of April of this year. Did you see if the Pledis ones were moved to the HYBE game by any chance?
Oh, I didn't. I didn't even think of that. They might
wonder.
have been.
Yeah.
But the dedicated one did go down in 2021, so.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, though, I would not be surprised if they just took
Vanished.
down
took
and
it
just
down
went,
all the way.
Screw 17 and everyone else. Yeah, I would not be surprised.
Yeah.
The only one getting taken down is kind of surprising as well.
Yeah, that one was weird to me. I understood Brand New and P Nation, but Woollim was weird, but it seems to be that they were on contracts. And so what some companies have done is that, like with BTS, for instance, theirs went down years ago, but they got the HYBE thing, obviously. But that was also kind of dovetailing with them having NetMarble buying stock in them and releasing games for BTS because they bought a bit of big hit. So I'm not sure if the timing of that. So there might be a couple of different deals going on with that.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I know that SM is releasing, allegedly, SM is releasing a game for all their artists this year.
Interesting.
So there's a lot of speculation as to what people are up to.
Right. Yeah, I feel like the time of Superstar has kind of passed.
Good, because I'm terrible at it.
Yeah,
so,
see,
I never get far.
I love these games. So, of all the games mentioned here, I played a lot of Superstar Pledis and FNC. And in my opinion, these games are actually really good for getting into artists you don't listen to, because if you're like me, you're a completionist and want all the highest ranked cards for each group, because at least when I played, you got essentially digital photo cards of each of the members, and they had ranks. So like bronze to, I think it might have been diamond rank, and I wanted all the highest rank cards for each group. So since each level is about like a minute long when it comes to the song, they never play the entire song. I was then incentivized to listen to the whole song, and I got into Priston in particular because of this. So
yeah,
it's an easy way to listen to a lot of music that you might not necessarily know.
Right. That was how I got into early BTS music, because I got into BTS when Dope came out. But I think, though, playing that game, though, was what introduced me to, like, No More Dream, No, stuff like that. That was my first introduction, was through there. As you said, that the songs are shorter. So then, and also, if you're trying to get a higher score, you're going to play it again and again, so you're going to remember it. So I do think it's good for that, but if you are very slow, like me, and you can't really get that far with it.
There are also a number of games that are for specific groups. To round out the discussion of Superstar tap rhythm games, groups that currently have their own include ATEEZ, Classy, Oh My Girl, Stacy, and The Boys. However, in the past, IZ*ONE had one until 2021, and Kang Daniel had one until 2023. Strangely, as of May 2024, when we're recording this, Luna's game is still going strong, even though the group has scattered. But that might be a Blackberry thing. Orbis Rejoice, I guess?
Another group that had a Superstar game was BTS, who had it until June 2020. Speaking of BTS, they've had a lot of games in recent years. The reason for this is that in May 2018, gaming giant NetMarble invested in Big Hit. The first game to come out of this was BTS World in June 2019. The storyline of it was that the player was BTS's manager, guiding them through their debut and rising success. There were also side stories for each member. It wasn't completely animated though, as the members participated in live-action acting as well.
I thought it was pretty engaging. And also the amount of work the members poured into this was impressive compared to other games that were coming out at that time, where it's like you have the live action, they worked on the soundtrack for it, there's a whole connection with offshoot storylines. It was more than I was expecting. So I was like, that's not bad. But it's another one of those games where you have to do cards, and it's like if you're not good at the whole matching thing, it's like there's only so much you can do.
Then in September 2020, BTS Universe Story came out, which was also a fictionalized story game involving the members. It didn't involve any live action, but it was based on the Bangtan universe, also known as the Most Beautiful Moment in Life series, which has been referenced in multiple works since the music video for I Need You in 2015. It uses that story, but allows players to make choices. However, the main draw that keeps players engaged is the whole visual novel fanfiction aspect, where you can place the members in stories you make up. Both of these games were discontinued last year, but BTS Island in the Psalm is still kicking as of this recording. If you haven't played it, it's where BTS gets shipwrecked and starts building a life on an island while exploring it. A quick warning with this one though, it takes up a lot of space on your phone.
I tried to reinstall it for this episode, and it wanted to delete like half of my apps, and I'm like, you're not worth that much. So I told JR, I was like, I don't know if they ever got off the island, but good luck to them. I can't help.
While on the topic of BTS last season, we talked about BT21. If you have listened to that K-pop mascots and characters episode, you'll recall that BT21 is a group of characters created in a collaboration between BTS and Line. Similar to the band, they too have multiple games, with titles like Hello BT21, BT21 Popstar, and Puzzle Star BT21. However, they were different in the way that puzzle games produced separately to the BTS ones. Another property connected with BTS is Tiny Tan, which is supposed to be small versions of the members. In 2022, they got their own Tamagotchis, and they're still available if you want to play a physical BTS game.
However, BTS wasn't the first K-pop group to have Tamagotchis. If you listen to the Detskis mini-series that we did in Season 2, this probably won't surprise you at all. Considering that DSP arranged for the group to do quite a few unorthodox activities, and the members were known for being gamers, it was inevitable that they'd have their own game in some way. Back when those episodes came out, I had heard that these existed, but I kind of blew it off until a friend of the show, J-Dux, managed to get one and uploaded footage of it last year. It's pretty neat that these still work over 2 decades later.
Going back to mobile games, another group that has its own game is BlackPink. BlackPink the Game was released last year and is where you get to act as the group's new producer and get them ready for a debut. It's a puzzle game, but also has you build up YG. What separates this game from others is how it has a community aspect to it that matches players for minigames, and you can run around BlackPink World with other players while customizing your character. Oldar was pleasantly surprised to find that it wasn't just the typical send a gift to your friend type game. However, just a heads up, this is also a large game and has an obnoxious tutorial.
That is my opinion. I just put it out there, it's not JR, it's me. It is, in my opinion, the worst tutorial I've ever seen in a video game because it is so restrictive and goes on for so long. So I like the game other than that. That was what made me stop playing the game the first time, was the tutorial, and then got back into it, still had some tutorial things. Worst part of the game. Anyway, sorry about that.
No, you're fine. Unlike BlackPink's game, the storyline for the game NCT Zone leans into fantasy, with the members of NCT being agents in Kwangya. It's a puzzle-matching game where you try to get rid of nightmares that have taken residence in the members' dreams. As with the BTS and BlackPink games, there are a lot of references to past songs, jokes, and events that fans will recognize. There's also a city-building component. Like BTS World, there's quite a bit of live-action acting mixed with animation, but NCT's acting is mostly meant to be comedic. So, if you like NCT, puzzles, and urban planning, this is the game for you.
Moving on, let's talk about our final recommendations. While we want to encourage our listeners to try to learn Korean, we know how much work goes into learning a language and practice can be a drag. But have you thought about practicing with your favorite video games that have Korean as a language option?
The first game I want to recommend that offers this is a favorite amongst the Sunbaes, and that's Stardew Valley. It's great if you want to practice reading or vocabulary for food, though just a heads up about typing with it is that the Hangul doesn't show up on screen until you finish typing out the word. Another game that offers Korean is Minecraft. It doesn't really affect the game beyond setup, but since there isn't much reading involved, it's not super overwhelming. So if you only want to learn a few words for materials or how to read a game menu, it's really good for that.
Finally, let's talk about Grand Theft Auto. I'm well aware of how much GTA fans dislike the definitive edition, and I'm not going to defend it, but it does have Korean as a language option, which typically isn't one of the languages offered by Rockstar Games. Like if you look up Bully, they'll have Russian, French, and Japanese, but Korean is typically not one of the options. However, for Definitive Edition, Korean subtitles are an option for all 3 games: San Andreas, 3, and Vice. However, the main problem I have with it is that it lacks the slang and vulgar words that the writing for GTA is known for, which results in the writing losing its charm, especially when it comes to San Andreas. For example, in English, when you die, the message says wasted. But for the Korean subtitles in San Andreas, they went with samang, which just means you're dead. Not even a cheeky Korean equivalent. That said, I do appreciate that the grammar and vocabulary used are clean and simple because it was easier for me to understand. So if you're well versed in that trilogy and you're studying more advanced Korean, you might be interested in the differences between the original and the translation. But it's also going to kind of make you sad for, again, I bring up San Andreas because of the writing of San Andreas. A lot of Smoke's dialogue isn't nearly as funny with the Korean subtitles, which is kind of sad. Any other comments, questions. I really try to make this comprehensive.
It was great.
To be honest, I'm not a gamer, so like all this information is new to me.
I wasn't sure if you were, and I'm like, and I know what games JR plays. I know Min plays PC games, but I wasn't sure about mobile games, so I was like with Min, I wanted her to get the dance stuff because she's a dancer. With JR, I wanted her to have certain games. So it's like, what did I think people would enjoy?
To wrap up, if you're both a gamer and a K-pop fan, there are a lot of options out there for you. If your favorite group doesn't have a dedicated game, they might still appear in one as a special event, or their music could be in one you haven't played before. We encourage you to explore these and to check if any games you play have Korean as a language option. We know more games will come out in the future, and a lot of idols are also gamers, so here's hoping we see companies invest more in this field. We also encourage you to look at the script for this episode because Oldar has so many interesting extras after the spoken portion. But that's all for today. JR, take it away.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, then please make sure to rate, subscribe, follow, and tell your friends about us. If you want to interact with us or just see more of our content, then you can follow the links in the description to our website, social media platforms, and our coffee. Also, don't forget that our next episode comes out on August 4th, 2024. Thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye.
또 만나요.
안녕.